5. Sultanbek Khojanov's political activity in Kazakhstan. A special extraordinary session of the Turkestan Central Executive Committee convened on September 15 to 16, 1924 to discuss and approve the plans for the delimitation of the TASSR, which meant the dissolution of the Republic. A group of the Kazakh party officials from Turkestan, headed by Khojanov, took part at the plenum of the Kazakh Regional Committee in Orenburg on September 26, 1924. Making a speech on behalf of Turkestan Kazakhs, Khojanov sharply criticized the Kazakh Regional Committee for not being sufficiently active in the campaign of the demarcation. He also spoke about the nationality policy in the country, considering its work to be highly dissatisfactory. Khojanov consistently criticized the problem of the nationality policy in the KASSR in the pages of Akjol long before this plenum. Being among the people who, as it seemed, were the chief policy conductors, he nevertheless got a negative reaction on the part of both European and Kazakh representatives, which forced him to come out with a strong statement. The problem is that we often forget the nationality question, whereas Europeans are the ones who particularly must know that while working in the national republics, they must not only keep it in memory, but also emphasize it when discussing these or other issues. In this respect, I am not very satisfied with the speeches of Comrade Yezhov and Bach. In the end, the situation is exactly as described by Comrade Yezhov, and if a number of comrades made some more speeches, we would eventually come to such division of labor that is needed on this issue, and namely that the Kyrgyz, Kazakh, communists should moderate chauvinistic attitudes and European colonialist. Then we would have a harmony. And again, we say to those who do not want to understand it, get out of the KSSR. Continuing this theme, in October of the same year, he wrote to Stalin, "No matter how, the European population in Kazakhstan is 54% of the total population, while only 46% of Kazakhs in an organization of the RKPB of Kazakhstan, the Kazakhs make up 6%, 368 people. And they are scattered on party divisions. The solution to this situation, as he systematically shows, is the prompt transfer of the center of the republic into the southern region, which is densely populated by the Kazakhs. This is clearly expressed in the following letter to Stalin, written in December 1924. The oddity that the Kyrgyz Kazakhs in their own country have a position of national minority is necessary to get rid of. The proletarian leadership should not be held in order to capture Kyrgyz parties of intelligent people in the proletarian center as Orenburg, but should be held in the living mass work instead. Proletarian leadership is not facilitated by a quantitative increase of the Russian peasants in the population, but it is rather complicated by aggravation of the traditional ethnic hatred and the inevitable assessment of the proletarian leadership impact as Russian national dominance. The proletarian leadership should not be expressed by the stagnation, but by the expanded, developing economic and social life of the country. After justifying and reconciling the further actions of the leadership of the Republic, Khojanov begins to build a working environment within the Secretariat and the government. It excites a petition before the Central Committee on the registration of the rights and responsibilities of the Secretariat of the Kazakh District Committee of the Russian Communist Party. As a result, the Secretariat places were distributed as such: Naneishvili, first secretary; Khojanov, second secretary; Yezhov, third secretary. The activity of Khojanov at the time was due to the fact that in the face of Naneishvili, the first secretary of Kazkraikom, he found a kindred spirit. Before replacing Naneishvili with Goloshkin, this political duo acted very well. For further offensive work, it was necessary to neutralize a combat of the groups and the government. Thus, at the threshold of the 5th Kazakh Congress of Soviets, he neutralizes the left group under the supervision of Mendyshev, the chairman of the Central Executive Committee, CEC, at the meeting of the Kazkraikom Bureau. Munbayev was appointed as a head of the Central Election Commission instead of Mendyshev. The seriousness of the fighting factions in the government is described in the following document written by Khojanov in the Bureau of the Regional Committee of the RKPB. In my absence this May 19, a decision of the composition of the Bureau of the Regional Committee was issued, and among other things, the majority opinion on the abandonment of Comrade Mendeshev in the Bureau was admitted. The main trouble in the practice of the Regional Committee until now was that its bureau, designed to carry out the fundamental tasks of the plenum of the Central Committee and the Regional Committee of the RKPB, was a kind of combination of various democratic groups and essentially consisted of a coalition of the groups, and it was not a working body of the Regional Committee. Now we have entered a period of hot practical work on the internal construction of Kazakhstan, and what was tolerable in the former congestive specific environment cannot be tolerable now. We will have to establish its center, creating a truly unified Republic of Kazakhstan, acting towards internal improvement of the Republic, taking urgent practical steps toward the entire service of Kazakhstan. Now facing those problems and tolerate grouping, allow mutual surveillance, panache the superiors of the administration, arrange the failure of the private business, which is in the hands of a hostile group of people, all these would be just criminal. Comrade Mendeshev, in the eyes of the masses, first of all, was a Soviet figure who was appointed 5 consecutive years as a CAC chairman. He was painlessly fired from his position, and no one was surprised by this case. It would seem that in order to eradicate the group difficulties in the Regional Committee, Comrade Mendeshev should be removed from the membership of the Bureau, and a new chairman of the CAC named Mumbayev should have been introduced instead. In such a case it would be, at least, of the one most intransigent groups, nonetheless, and the possibility of practical work would have increased instead of endless fights and intrigues against each other. Concerns of the comrades that Mendeshev will once and forever rejected the austere group were not serious in my opinion. I think that the best guarantee is not words but the eradication of those opportunities. By leaving the former situation as it was, I consider it as the desire to maintain the status quo and as a desire to not improve it. I believe that the time for European comrades have come into power when they have, at least to some extent, to run the risk and rely on some part of the Kyrgyz Kazakh workers, and together with them carry out the urgent work and forever stop the competition between different groups for individual satisfaction and play a crucial role, only taking an advantage of developed disagreement rather than principled governing. As one of the practical steps in this direction, I consider that the following is appropriate. 1. To increase the number of members of the Regional Committee to the Bureau to 9 and then to 7. 3. In the headquarters and 4 in the representation offices. 2. To approve Comrade Mumbayev instead of Mendeshev and Jandusov instead of Kuletov. 3. To have two secretaries as on the example of the other republics of the National Central Committee, one European and one Kyrgyz. Thus, due to the full support of the first secretary of CARICOM, Comrade Khojanov was able to make some progress in intergroup struggle to bring like-minded people in responsible positions, thereby creating the conditions for fruitful work. He succeeds in the short term to move the capital to the south of Kazakhstan in the city of Akhmovsk, and there to hold the fifth All-Kazakh Congress of Soviets for the first time in the newly merged Kazakhstan. The Congress outlined the principal positions in the government. On the agenda of the Congress there were such questions as land management and irrigation, public education, trade and cooperation, the financial situation in Kazakhstan, etc. At this particular Congress, the capital of Akhmovsk was renamed in Kizil Orda Red Headquarters. The historical name of indigenous local folk of the Republic, such as Kazakhs, was returned. Previously, mistakenly, they were calling themselves Kyrgyz. However, in politics of Kazakhstan, cool changes were coming. In July, Moscow withdrawn Nanishvili and in August sent Golishkin instead. Khojanov initiated an environment of active work in the Republic, cannot work together with Goloshekin, as the new protege of Moscow. As subsequently it becomes known, he was unquestioning the executor of the center. Without taking into account the specifics of the Republic, and who was regardless of the opinion of the National Communists. Knowing Khojanov since his work in the Turkestan Commission, Goloshekin realized that he could not easily carry instructions from Moscow. So, in October, during his visit to Stalin, he sought the withdrawal of Khojanov to Moscow at the disposal of the Central Committee of the RCPB. After getting rid of Khojanov, Goloshekin, he experiences resistance from other National Communists in the face, Mumbayev, chairman of the CEC, and Sadvokazov in the commissariat. So, for the removal of nationals who have their own point of view in solving various problems, Goloshekin accuses the behavior, performance, and EPI strategy of a group of comrades, Khojanov, Munbayev, and Sadvokazo, at the third plenum of the VKPB, Kazakh. On this basis, the official campaign against the National Communists begins, denoting their previous activities in Kazakhstan as Khojanov and Sadvokazov movement. Later, Khojanov writes a letter to the Kraikom regarding the groundlessness of the plenum decisions, condemning him and belonging to the opposition, as well as for active participation in the Khojanov-Sadvokazov group. But he admits that during campaigns he had nationalist ideas in carrying out such campaigns as eliminations of residues of the colonial regime, land reform, national delimitation, moving the center of the KSSR, etc. At the end of the letter, he stated to Stalin about his willingness to give up his mistakes. At that time, Khojanov, who was an exchange student on the course Marxism and Leninism in Moscow, understands that this campaign can prevent his eventual return to Kazakhstan. In March 1927, Khojanov held a meeting with Stalin, which resulted in a letter of Stalin to Goloshekin. On one of these days, comrades, Khojanov has turned to me with the complaint that the comrades of Kazakhstan accuse him in sympathizing with or belonging to the opposition and asked me to express my opinion. I readily agreed to it, saying to him that I have absolutely no reasons to accuse him in sympathizing with and even more of belonging to the opposition in the CP. I know that Khojanov has residues of internationalist outlook. I know that these residues are not only academic, but also practical, which have been one expressed in a certain group fighting in Kazakhstan. But this fact certainly does not give us the reason to accuse Khojanov in sympathy or in belonging to the opposition. And in a conversation with me, Sultanbek Khojanov didn't deny the presence of nationalist basis in his work in Kazakhstan. He expressed his willingness to give any statement to the press or in any other form that he was willing to give up his mistakes. I have no doubt that he will reinforce his commitment with his work immediately if required by Kraikom. I think that the regional committee should help him in this matter. If the regional committee is pleased, I am ready to render any assistance from my side. With communistic greetings, Stalin. In December 1927, after completion of the course on Marxism and Leninism, Khojanov, finding himself completely rehabilitated for Kazakh and Stalin, refers to Kazakh Bureau of the VKPB with his willingness to work. In November 1926, at the third plenum of the regional committee, I was accused at my absence for the nationalistic ideas and the group-related actions in the past. For the purpose of rehabilitation, I wrote an explanation and tried to correct my mistakes. Now I graduated from the courses, and I have the opportunity to correct my mistakes practically. In fact, to prove my loyalty to the party line and the ability to work without grouping and without nationalism. My statement on August 10, 1927, Kraikom was recognized as a step to rectify. Of course, a rectification shouldn't be in words but in deeds instead, and it has to be done nowhere else but in Kazakhstan. I need to stand the test of the party and to demonstrate my loyalty exactly in the place where these errors were committed and where these accusations have been stated. I am confident that Kraikom will give me this opportunity. On March 9th this year, in the letter to Goloshekin about me, Comrade Stalin wrote he is willing to give up his mistakes. I have no doubt that he will reinforce his commitment with his work immediately, if required by Kraikom. I think the regional committee should help him in this matter. On the 6th All-Kazakh conference of the VKPB, Comrade Goloshekin, in respect of the permissibility to use me in Kazakhstan, said, I believe that it is acceptable, but not a managerial position, assigning him to any other position and take a good look a year. I appreciate this comradely, attentive attitude to me by Comrade Goloshekin. In this I realized the assistance of the regional committee which was mentioned by Comrade Stalin. I am willing to undergo this test. I ask to give me this opportunity, appointing me for a job either in the office of the regional committee, Kraikom, or at the regional Soviet Party school, so I could undergo this test under the direct supervision of Kraikom. In addition to that, my personal and family circumstances forced me to move to the South and Central Asia, and my desire to have 2 years of work with the books makes me to apply for a job on the line of Soviet Party school. Sultanbek Khojanov, December 6, 1927, Moscow. However, Kazakh found it impossible to provide Khojanov with work in Kazakhstan. Especially in view of the forthcoming collectivization, he was not a convenient figure. As it turned out, he was no longer destined to return to Kazakhstan. He was directed to the Central Asian Bureau, which has entrusted only a position of a deputy director of Agitprom campaign department. After removal of Khojanov from the Republic, Goloshekin gets rid of the other national communists, leaving next to him only the obedient to his will and never arguing nationals. Khojanov, appointed by the first secretary of Ukraine Kaganovich, almost at the same time with Goloshekin, despite the conflicts, still was able to work together with such national communists such as Alexander Shumsky and Mykola Skripnik. Due to this, the base for the development of Ukrainization was established, which do not interfere with further curtailment of the national policy in the 30s. And the method of the work of Goloshekin with national communists in Kazakhstan, the voluntarism, has prevailed. Consistent support of Goloshekin from the center in his fight against national communists is due to the fact that in Kazakhstan the land management of Kazakhs, has not been resolved. That support eventually had to affect the success in the holding of the national policy. The policy of gradual subsidence of the Kazakh people was not stipulated by the party. This fact explains the contradictions that arose between the party and national communists. But the administration headed by Goloshekin didn't consider it necessary to solve the problem of gradual painless settling of Kazakhs and to take into account the arguments of the national communists. This would be the basis of the national policy. As it is known, the party was willing to see prompt results. By 1928, Goloshekin, having reached his autocracy, devoted to his method of working, would lead a campaign of collectivization. As it is known, in a result of collectivization, famine engulfed the whole of Kazakhstan. People of Kazakhstan had to endure Goloshekin until 1933. By this time, Kazakhstan would lose half of its population.